So today, I kind of want to share with you some of the things that I get called for daily. Like, I get a lot of guys call. I got an email yesterday, Todd, I need some Techmar training, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. Well, Techmar's in Vernon. Would you like to go to their shop? They've been up there for like 40 years. They brought Outdoor Reset to Canada. Outdoor Reset, you put a sensor outside, there's a math formula, and that's the water temperature you're getting. And then they developed products where you actually had these sensors in the house to give that development. And now what we have is sensors that you can put throughout the whole apartment building and tell that boiler exactly what to do. You know, a lot of these homes, these buildings, I live in an old apartment, 1970s, right? I sit there, we got a boiler outdoor reset control. Guess what happens in the middle of winter? Our elderly folks there, the baseboards are just not hot enough. So guess what? We got to go down and we got to play with the controls and play with the boiler and do this and do that, right? Right now, it's hot out. If it dips down tonight to 19 degrees Celsius, the rules say you got to have that boiler on. Do you think the apartments are actually even calling for heat? Not at all, right? But you got to have that on. So you're pumping 140 degrees, maybe you're pumping 80, 90 degree water throughout that system, right? And you're heating up that water. Nobody even needs it, right? So we're trying to bring up that level. We're trying to, why are we wasting your gas? Everyone's got, oh, you got to go electricity. You got to, ban everything. No, we need to fine tune what we have today, right? If we sit there, I look here, I love that Fortis and those guys have rebates. No one's looking at the commercial market. Did you walk in here? You saw that thermostat on the wall and the plastic cover? You think anyone's touching that? Do you think anyone's doing this thermostat here? Are they doing any programmable setback? I bet you this thing's on all the time. Look at all the restaurants, all the hotels, all those tilt-up warehouses. No one's touching the thermostat and going, oh, I should turn my warehouse down. Think about the restaurant industry. Everyone's like, oh, man, like our restaurants are struggling, right? Well, are you paying to heat this place all night and all day? You're not even there, right? No one's using that stuff. You give someone an app on their phone, people are on their phones, right? They're looking at that stuff. They're going at it. They're interfacing, right? You get that to building owners, things like that. We're going to make a difference, right? So one of the things that I'm going to talk about today is custom homes, but not just custom homes, right? Buildings, apartments, commercial buildings, right? We look around here, we go, oh, we got this fancy control system that this fancy customer put in, and that's all they do is controls. But it's a system that you have to hire someone to program everything, and no one knows anything about it, right? And what we try to create here is something that we all can kind of work on, right? Techmar's been really flexible. We have a lot of contractors that work on Techmar. They know it. Guys have phoned me up, walk them through a menu, a couple menus, right? You know, we have records. We have a lot of jobs now. I started doing drawings in 2007, right? When I started doing Techmar, guy would call me up and I'm going like, Bob's house. Oh, Bob's house. Okay, here's your drawing, Bob's house. Today, in the last 5, 6, 8 years, I've been getting addresses. So I know what houses have what. So if a plumber calls, say, hey, Jay's like, he's like, hey, Todd, I'm back at this house on Marine Drive. This one guy was playing around with something, or maybe they had a challenge. Hey, I'll walk you through the settings. Put it in the settings and we're good to go, right? If it wasn't me, you could call Techmar. He's like, hey, I got these specific components. Walk you through it and you're done, right? Get you in and out of that job. It's trying to respect your time as well, right? I have guys phone me, they'll be like, oh, I've been in front of these controls now for 4 hours. Like, just call me in the first 5 minutes. Right? You got your homeowner breathing down your neck. Our challenge with hydronics is it's not everywhere. We're in a forced air world. Face it. Everything is all about forced air, dual fuel. Because there's not a lot of hydronics, people aren't taking the courses. People aren't getting the training. Or people take the training and the builders want to put in forced air. Because hydronics is getting more money, right? The air-to-water heat pump, we used to go with a gas boiler. Cost you $800. I remember working in Surrey there. Super hot boiler, $800. You could do a 4,000 square foot home, right? We went to that. Back when I started at Techmar, that's when modular condensing boilers came in the marketplace. And we had to go to those boilers, right? And I'm going to talk a bit about that. But we've gone to a point where we used to have a cost-effective way to heat our home. Hydronics is fantastic because you can do zoning. You can have thermostats in every room if you like. Whoa, I'm way in the way. I'm super in the way. I'll block it. Check one. So we look at zoning. Maybe we want to zone our houses. Maybe we want to zone our commercial projects, right? Maybe we're doing a care home. Maybe we're doing a hospital. I remember doing the Kitimat. It was like a care home. It was like Kitimat, I think it was a hospital. And it was all in-joist heating. It was kind of laid out like this. Big, huge living rooms, single rooms. And we retrofitted all with thermostats and controls. They did in-joist heating, and it was fantastic. And I don't think we've had complaints or callbacks. And that was like 15 years ago, 10 years ago. Because what we're trying to do with our systems is be accurate. And not only are we don't want to overheat, but we want to ensure that we're not wasting energy. So a lot of the requests today are people looking at hidden sensors, right? A big trend, a lot of the custom home market, they don't want anything on the wall, right? They don't want wall plugs. Like, well, what are you going to plug your hairdryer into, right? So, what's going on? Everything's hidden. You open up the drawer in the bathroom, there's their plug. Some pretty neat stuff. So what we do to design a system, you want to talk to the homeowners, right? The building owners. Do you want to have different rooms that you're not even going to use, right? It's a lot more flexible and easy to do this with hydronics than it is with forced air, okay? And so what you do is you sit down, you say, okay, let's pick out some zones. What do you want? Zone 1, we got the master bedroom or primary bedroom. You have living room, dining room, kitchens, bedrooms. Perhaps we put in a couple thermostats, right? I have one job, 50 thermostats in the house. Okay, I live in a 50-unit apartment. We also have 50 thermostats. Guess what? It's on one pump. Okay, one pump does a lot. We see a lot of complexity out there. Guys, lots of different things added. That house, of course, is a crazy custom mega mansion, but they're able to turn half of it down because they can go on their system and turn down these thermostats and let them work. So one thing I recommend you do when you're starting a project, you're working on a project, is go through. Now, back in the day, I'm 53 now, I got grandkids now. Back in the day, Grandpa Todd, guy would come to the counter, the wholesaler, hey, I need a thermostat. Okay, here, I'll go grab you one, here you go. Or we'd have a chart that says, okay, here's 20 thermostats to choose from. What are you doing? You doing this, doing that, doing this, doing that. And that was it at the end of the conversation, right? We didn't talk about air conditioning. We didn't talk about what kind of system you have. We didn't talk about, are you doing in-floor heating? Are you doing in-the-joist heating? Are you doing a thin slab? A 6-inch concrete slab is going to react a lot differently to 140-degree water than a thin slab is. You look at other items there. Hydronics, okay? We're now able to do chilled water cooling. To a lot of systems now, we're seeing hot water and cold water systems. We're running water throughout the building, not refrigeration pipe. Low mass radiant, fan coils, fin tube convectors, they all react differently to the water that you provide to them. They're going to output different things. How many of you guys have been an old cast iron radiator? You touch it, it's nice and warm and cozy. You put that in there, right? Old copper fin baseboard, slat fin, or whatever brand you have, right? They react a little differently. A lot of old apartment buildings have fin tube convectors, right? Can they operate at low temperatures? Yes, they can, right? Can they operate at high temperatures? Yes, they can, right? We have one project right now where the engineer I'm working with, they just want to have the baseboards run at the same temperature year-round. And they're putting in these high-end appliances. I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, we can do better, right? We can do way better. So we have things like, I knew it did a skip. Hydronic manifolds. You guys are familiar with doing radiant heating. If not, a lot of manifolds are used to run PEX tubing to all the different areas, right? Some buildings have loops, multiple loops in the floor. Tubing will be in concrete, or maybe they're a dry system. But one of the things when you're designing a system, you have to find out how much power does it need? So one of the things we look at when we're designing a system is if you're using manifolds or actuators or zone valves, how much power do these need? How many actuators they have? This is one of the things when you're designing custom homes is, okay, how many manifolds do you have? And we have to power those, so we need to figure out how much power they need. So cooling, all right? This is cool. I like cooling. It's pretty cool. Have conversations with your builders and clients if they're doing the heating side of the job. How many customers have called me and they're like, Todd, I need 10 thermostats for this house. I'm like, oh, great. Anyone doing the air conditioning? Is there air conditioning? Oh yeah, that's another guy. I'm like, did you talk to him? No. I'm like, maybe you should talk to him. Let's have a conversation. Let's sit down with your owners. What's your air conditioning? What is your cooling? What are you doing for heating? Okay? Our codes, our energy step code says there has to be some way that you don't want these things fighting. You know, 2 thermostats on the wall. How many of you have seen 2 thermostats on the wall with Post-it notes? How many of you have seen that in like billion-dollar houses? Oh yeah, it's there too, so don't worry. It's for everybody. 2 thermostats on the wall, right? Okay, let's just turn off this radiant heating, or let's just turn it down. Let's crank the cooling. Let's play with that game. Most builders don't want thermostats on the wall. A lot of times people don't want thermostats on the wall nowadays, right? We can do hidden sensors. I was at a job in Victoria. Went into the guy's house. I was there for some other reason. The homeowner's there, and he's gone around. He's been researching thermostats. He bought this brand and that brand. He had these all, bought from different places. And I roll in, my Ford Flex, looking all cool, Victoria. We got, I show him, I'm like, hey, remote sensor. You want a remote sensor? He's like, what? He's like, here I've been wasting time trying to find the best looking thermostat. You come in and say, we're just going to put a sensor on the wall. We're going to paint over it. You're going to make good records of where that is. And we're going to assure that. I was talking to one builder the other day. They're going to the point now when they're building these houses, they're implementing like their own AI system in that house. They're basically going in and they're saying, hey, when I build this house, we're going to know where everything is. So you'd be like, Alexa, where does this light switch go to and what's it wired to? Stuff like that. Things are getting that pretty cool. All right? They're getting better details. What is going on in my house? I remember going to one guy's house. I won't mention his name. He's in the Lulu area. Won't bring out his name. He bought a new house, and I went into it, and I went in the mechanical room, and it's not him. It was like whoever's looking after this house. Like the mechanical room is just like the dirtiest thing ever. Like, it's not him. I'm not blaming him. So I didn't want to bring his name up. But it's like, no one's even looking after this stuff, right? We're getting rebates. We're getting some great incentives. We're growing this market. We're trying, hey, we want to do hydronics, but we also need you guys to look after things. So I don't know where I'm going with that, but what I'm going with here is with cooling, we want to look at integrating cooling with your hydronic systems, right? Now we have lots of different options for cooling. Floor cooling. How many of you guys done floor cooling? Have you seen it? It's pretty cool. Our first job we did a commercial job called Praya Jewelry. Anyways, this is high-end jewelry. Hollywood saw their stuff, and now they're super awesome. They have tons of stuff. We have floor cooling on each floor. They didn't do any forced air cooling. I have the ability to go in and we can graph it. I can see it today. A lot of times it's running at like 60 Fahrenheit water. And it's actually keeping the place cool. And it's pretty neat to see. We use thermostats that have humidity sensors. But we also have fan coil chilled water cooling, right? Hydronic cool. Companies like Jaga, and there's other guys like, I don't want to miss any, so there's a handful of them. They're coming from Europe, right? Europe is hydronics. You go to Europe, you go to school for like 7, 8 years. I met a guy with a master's degree in refrigeration. I think, Jay, you hired him, right? Or no, maybe. I don't know. It was a guy, a master's degree in refrigeration. I'm like, I didn't know that was even possible. I guess so. Anyways, they just do water over there, right? So, hey, yeah. Fan coil cooling. We also have options for VRF systems. variable refrigerant flow, where you're getting all these different heads that you put in. You get things that are hidden. You'll get items where you bring a refrigeration pipe now. You have almost like a manifold of refrigeration piping going to all these things. I went to this place in Whistler. It was like they had this big manifold. It was like 50 pipes, refrigeration pipes going all throughout the house, right? Hope that doesn't leak. If that chilled water leaks, well, we got leak detection systems for that. That's another seminar. Or we just have traditional air conditioners, heat pumps, right? Perhaps it's dampered. One of the neat things about having integrated air conditioning systems, the company we work with, Techmar, they created this system called air groups, and this is really neat. What we have is, say, for example, your top floor is 5 zones of radiant heating. So you have 5 thermostats, 1 in each bedroom, maybe you got 1 in a bathroom. And perhaps you just have 1 air conditioning system. You have an air conditioner or a heat pump. You're blasting that to everybody. What these thermostats have the ability to do, now they're all talking to each other, is they can average the whole air temperature of all 5 of those zones, tell that in-floor heating to turn off, and run the air conditioning, right? So now we're looking at the whole top floor, right? How many guys, I've been to jobs, got all these thermostats throughout. HVAC guy has gone and put a thermostat in the hallway, right? How many, my wife, she loves the air conditioning on, right? Put the thermostat in the primary bedroom, right? That's, hey man, that's the luxury. You want to have that cooling? Put it in the main primary bedroom. Put it in the main living dining room. But also have it as zone of radiant. 2 in 1, right? Why am I buying 2 thermostats? Why don't I buy 1 that can do heating and cooling? So that's what we're promoting and what we're seeing. What we're also seeing now is the input of air-to-water heat pumps, geothermal, right? Geothermal kind of came out, back in the 90s, and it was pretty significant. A lot of things were done. And now with air-to-water heat pumps, we're able to use that appliance to do heating and cooling. Here's a great setup here. We've done this on many projects. Here's an air-to-water heat pump, gas boiler. Gas boilers used to do your domestic hot water. Why? Because it's safer. We can get that hot water hot. We don't have another tank that's sitting there with Legionellas growing as this water is just sitting here at like 80 degrees, 70 degrees, 80 degrees. So we use a gas boiler doing an indirect tank, right? So we're sharing that energy, right? We're making sure that our domestic hot water is safe, right? I have a really bad feeling about a lot of these systems these days where people are using air-to-water heat pumps to make domestic hot water and then putting it into another tank. It's a project up in Squamish, huge operation. They have 20 heat pumps. Who's on a strata? Anyone? I am, I'm the president. Stratas go through people like crazy. They want to find the cheapest bid, right? How many guys in here know how to work on 20 heat pumps? Anyone? Few, no hands, right? Why? Because they were just put in. I'm not knocking them, okay? These are things that have been, we have to put these things in. A lot of times now we have our government saying you can't do this now, right? Putting in these air-to-water heat pumps, they're all going into a storage tank, and then they're going to a final storage tank. So they're sitting in that one storage tank, hopefully at a safe temperature, and then when someone opens a tap, that water goes from that tank into the next tank, and hopefully the next tank sanitizes it and gets it hot enough to kill off that Legionellas. Because there has not been proper studies, right? We have government saying you gotta put in air-to-water heat pumps on everything. Okay, you wanna make domestic hot water with that? You want 4 tanks in your house, right? You guys all have glasses of water on your table, right? You got cups of coffee, you start bringing them together, hot, cold, hot, cold. You got all this environment now, you got 4 tanks in your house. What do you think's going on in there, right? Do you have to put fans in to blow humidity? We got Eneready there, we're blowing in some fresh air, we're getting some good stuff happening, right? So, this is why I like promoting these kinds of setups, because we want to be safe. We want to put in things that's not monkey business, right? We want to make sure that we have some level of proper piping schematics, right? There's things that work. There's jobs out there that you go into. I got guys phoning me, oh, this doesn't work, the last plumber, beep, beep, beep. I'm like, yeah, but that's what he was taught. Or maybe he only did one job a year. Maybe he doesn't understand that. But it's been working for 30 years, so what's the problem, right? We gotta tear all this out. No, you don't. It works fine, right? One of the things we're also seeing is damper boards, right? So we'll tie into damper boards with our thermostats. This guy on the right-hand side, adapters for the VRF systems. When you're choosing a cooling system for your home, if it's proprietary, meaning that you have to use their thermostats, I'm not saying you have to use my thermostats too, but if you're doing a home with hydronic heating and you have a cooling system, our codes say you gotta make sure it's something so they don't fight, right? When you build a house, maybe you're talking with the owner. Okay, you could go in there and show him, okay, you're gonna do this with your thermostats. Now they've gotta sell their house. Something's come up, whatever, they sell it. The new guy, he's lost. He doesn't know what's going on. He just got a house, whatever, it was a court sale, and he doesn't know how anything works. So you wanna build your houses so they're not science projects, right? You wanna have consistency. I've seen and done a lot of science projects. People come to me with science projects. I'm like, hey, let's try it, right? Empress Gin. They came to me and they said, we need to chill our water going to these vats that make yummy Empress Gin in Victoria. Our colleague West Bay out in Victoria, awesome guy out there, Barry, says to me, Todd, can we do this with your floor cooling control? I'm like, I don't know. Let's give it a try. Anyways, it worked. And they use it, and they put it in. They use it for floor cooling. But they're not floor cooling, they're actually cooling the vats of their system. So we've done some really neat stuff over the years with our controls, but we've done some things that are really consistent. And we just want to say, hey, we do this setup, we're good to go. So I go back to, you're designing a system. Here's a bunch of questions that I sometimes ask. What's going on in each room? First stage of heat, second stage of heat. What's your cooling? Do you want a remote sensor? Do you have, what thermostats do you want? We'll choose that, we'll look at that, right? Sometimes folks will call me and they'll give me a whole essay of what's going on in their house. I'm like, that's a lot of reading, right? Just seem to know a few things. What's going on in every room? Oh, I don't know, I didn't talk to the guy, right? How many zones are chosen by the wholesaler designer? They don't know, right? I used to do heat losses at Universal Supplies. I did it for 5 or 6 years. And we used to pump them out like crazy because the municipality said, you need to do this heat loss calculation. We need to do a stamp drawing. We pick out the boiler, you pick all the equipment, you stamp it, you sign it. The inspectors saw that someone else was doing it. But guys would come in there and they would say, Todd, you pick the zoning. Okay, sure. I wasn't selling thermostats back then, so I was like, oh, okay, I'll put one here, and there you go, right? And you know what? Let's talk to the owner. What do you want in your house, right? Do you need to have 50 thermostats in your house? Probably not. Well, that one guy did. But, other people, sure, right? I was making a joke earlier when the Olympics were here. We got this massive project in Cheakamus Crossing. I thought it was one townhouse. It turned out to be like 300 of them, right? They put in like 10 thermostats in every townhouse. And I asked the guy designing it, I said, why are you putting in so many thermostats in the townhouse? He's like, oh, the IOC wants that. I'm like, really? Like, okay, sure. Anyways, I didn't know there was gonna be the volume of stats, but what ended up happening is it was all for housing for the athletes, and then they turned around and they actually removed a lot of thermostats, and people lived there. But that whole project was to be a district heating job. Right? It was all district heating, all hot water coming from sewage plants, going to all these heat pumps. But it was new to the industry. And unfortunately, a lot of heat pumps failed because the water's just too hot going to them. You're trying to get rid of that energy. You don't want it in there, right? And you're selling these things on a multiple basis, right? So it's really important to chat with your owners. What are you guys doing in your system? Generic wiring versus connected systems. So, how are we turning on our boilers? How many guys put in zone valves. We go to the counter, I need a zone valve with an end switch. So an end switch is a switch on a zone valve. A thermostat gets wired to a zone valve. A zone valve opens up, lets water to those individual rooms, right? Now on that zone valve is a switch, right? So we do a system, maybe we have 4 thermostats, right? Whatever thermostat comes on comes that boiler, right? But they're random calls, right? Little powder room comes on, my 50 zoner. Let's look at our 50 zoner, for example. Let's just do 20. A little more reasonable. You know? What's it doing to the boiler? Erratic on and off times. Oh, the powder room is on. Pff, on comes the boiler, right? The ensuite is on comes the boiler, right? The master bedroom finally comes on comes the boiler. Short cycling these boilers like crazy. You know, when I started this business, we had some great boilers. We had boilers that were tons of cast iron. You have cast iron heat exchangers. You'd have a vent damper, a pump, one little gas valve. And maybe you might have a control board here just to do some spark ignition. That was it for parts. That's it. Imagine what we're doing to these boilers. With these boilers with end switches, it doesn't really matter. They got a huge cast iron. They're probably not even firing because they're nice and hot, right? Yeah, they're 80% efficient. Oh well, it's not that bad. These boilers can get multiple calls and not have problems. I live in an old apartment building. I got 2 super hot boilers that have been there since the 90s. You know what? I don't want to take them out. I don't want to put in mod cons, right? And I'm sorry, mod con people. You know, yeah, I'm sorry about that because how we're treating them. So today's boilers, when I went to the wholesaler, the parts we had on the shelf, we just had maybe a gas valve, maybe a vent damper. That was it. Those are all the parts you had to change. Now you go into the wholesalers, you know, these are awesome boilers. They're great. There's folks in here that sell boilers. We're end switching these things still, but now they have so many parts. How many used to work on old cars? Anyone used to work on old cars? A couple folks, right? You'd open up the car, old 50 Chevy, you know, your dad was working on it. He was like, he'd know how to change the oil and pull everything out. Oh, wow, I could do this. And there's the battery. Like I got an old camper van. You open it up, you're like, oh, there's this, there's that part. But I also have another car, Ford Flex. I open up there, I'm like, nope, close it. Right? There's so many parts, right? I had to change a water pump on my car. The pump cost $250. It was $8,000 to get it out of there, okay? Same with these guys, okay? Not saying the parts are $8,000, but there's so many parts in them now. There's fans, there's this, there's that, there's this whole list. You go in a wholesaler, there's shelves and shelves of parts, right? You know what? It's great. But guess what we're doing to them, man? We're end switching them, and guess who's ticked off? The owner. Guess what's happening on the heat exchangers? They're getting built up with gas. Are we even burning that gas properly enough? Again, I'm not blaming Fortis, okay? This is just the blame. I love Fortis. Like, you guys have been great for us. We appreciate it. But this is where our world has taken us, to these condensing type boilers. They came from Europe. What they do in Europe is they have radiators throughout, and they have one sensor somewhere in the building, and that tells the boiler what it should be doing. And the pumps are on all the time, and we're just looking at the outdoor temperature, and we're changing that temperature based on that sensor being in the kitchen, right? Grandma's in there cranking the heat. She's cooking some awesome pie, right? It's in England, you know, it's probably some good pie, like shepherd's pie. No, I don't know. Anyways. You ever watch any of those old shows, English shows? You see everyone's wearing sweaters and that. They're cold, right? People aren't going to tolerate that here. People need their heating. Canadians need our heating, and we need our domestic hot water. We are a cold climate, but we're also now a pretty hotter climate as well, right? We have a lot of places out there that can hugely benefit from better hydronic systems because of their flexibilities. You take those end switches, you're on and off those boilers now. The little powder room comes on off, on off, on off, right? So what we're doing to these boilers, we're wrecking them, okay? We're not taking good care of our appliances. So that's where we sit there. This Techmar came into the picture, right? I started learning about Techmar about 18, 19 years ago, right? Became the rep. Doing that, you start to learn a lot more because as a rep, we're getting calls from all over BC. So I started to learn things, starting to figure things out. Okay, what's better for these systems, right? Here's just various options of some thermostats with some wiring centers. So what do we do differently as Techmar? How do we make this happen? So with parent communications, these are not part of the boilers or heat pumps. These are what's actually in the environment working with that appliance. So what we do is we have thermostats that work together with a wiring center, and we do this feature called zone synchronization. And what we do now is because we're all linked together, if a little powder room or an ensuite or something starts calling, we said, wait till the beginning of your cycle period. We're going to create these cycles. They're going to be 20 minutes long. Okay, 20 minutes here. Okay, this is a 20-minute cycle period. What we're going to do is we're going to say, just wait till you fire that boiler. Okay, don't just end switch it. Just give it a few seconds. 20 minutes is not, people aren't going to notice anything. What we're going to do is we're going to create a good load on the boiler. We're going to say, hey, what does this house need? All right, let's bring on all the zones at once to create a good load on that boiler. What do you think it's doing to that gas? It's burning it good. All right, what do we do to that boiler? We're firing it for a decent amount of time. Right, like, hey, we're finally burning. When we did that with old cast iron boilers, right, it didn't really matter. You had so much metal in there that you probably didn't have to turn on that boiler. Today's boilers, air-to-water heat pumps, the heat exchangers are so small. They're braze plate heat exchangers, or they're tube type, or they're different. There's not much water in these boilers, so we have to fire them. We have to get them going. So we're going to turn on the boilers, turn on the zones all at once to create a good load on that boiler. And so what happens is you're reducing your short cycling, you got longer, better equipment life. Right? I'd love to go back to some of these buildings and sort of study them and see like who did better. So what we add to this feature called indoor temperature feedback. And what indoor temperature feedback is, thermostats in their rooms, we do look at the outdoor sensor as a starting point, and we have like a reset control. And what changes the water temperature to these pipes? Different structures will change that. Okay. When you do a heat loss, part of the heat loss program, how many of you guys done your heat loss program? A couple guys, good job. You know what? When I found out of the heat loss program is you said, okay, what water temperature do all these zones need, right? Well, this needs 104 because it's down here. Maybe they're doing laundry. I need some heat, but not that much. I'm over here on the south side. I need a little more heat. I'm over here. I need less heat. So like, Todd, are we going to put in 12 mixing valves? Yikes. What our controls do is when we do that zone synchronization, when we bring on all zones at once, we say who needs the worst case temperature? Worst case scenario temperature. Okay, that one zone, we need 110 degrees, right? This could be in the joist. Okay, that system, we need 138 degrees. So we're going to take our equipment and we're going to say, okay, all the zones turn on at once to create a good load on that boiler. And at that same time, hey everybody, you're all getting 128 degrees. Those that don't need it stand for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Those that need it stand for the full 20 minutes. And then what it does is it reevaluates the system. Where did I go wrong, right? Maybe someone's opened up the garage and the garage is like cold air is blowing in there, right? Now my thermostat's saying, hey man, this one room is really cold, right? So look, let's fire that boiler again. We're gonna go to 130. Hey everyone, you're getting 130. Those that don't need it stand for a long period of time. Those that don't need it stand for a short period of time. And so we separate, we call our systems, we cycle them, they bring them on in 20-minute cycles, bring them all at once to create a good load on that boiler, and then the system reevaluates. And what we find is we're reducing our operating costs, but also increasing the comfort in these homes. There's different thoughts on radiant floor heating. Some people think the floors need to be warm all the time. Thing is, if they're going to be warm all the time, you're going to be warm all the time, and you're going to overheat that home, and you're going to waste energy. Back when we were doing these homes, we would take the boiler, super hot boiler, we'd put in a thermostatic mixing valve. Because the boilers couldn't put out low temperatures, we put in a 3-way mixing valve. We'd manually set it at 140 degrees, and it'd be at that temperature year-round. Contractors say, oh, we just want the cheapest thing. Okay, put that in. A lot of people didn't care, because they go in their house and say, oh, I love it, it's so warm in here. But then other people started to realize, like, why does my thermostat say 78 in it? I only want it to be 70 or 29, right? It's so hot in here. So that's what we're doing. We're fine-tuning now that water temperature to all the zones, right? How is this done? Well, we take these boilers now, and there's some really great boilers out there. One of them, we just mentioned the Lochinvar Night, has this called 0 to 10 volt input. There's another brand, IBC. There's other brands on the marketplace, and this is what we're promoting is make sure your boiler has this 0 to 10 volt input. Yeah, your boiler, okay, people say, oh, my boiler has its own controls. That's fantastic. But it doesn't know that maybe there is vaulted ceilings and lots of glass. Doesn't know it's multi-zoned, anything like that, right? So we're now communicating back to that boiler, and we're fine-tuning its water temperature, and we're able to change its water temperature now. You couldn't do that with the old cast iron boilers. You could use a motorized mixing valve, and you control the water with the mixing valve. I had that on the last slide there. So now we can take these boilers and we can modulate their burners. And we're doing this on a small scale and a large scale, right? When we've seen it done on a large scale, there's a care home here in Burnaby, did all these Tecmar thermostats. We modulate the burner based on what the care home needs. We did 3 care homes. Do you think we got any complaints about heating? Nothing. No one's complained. We had one complaint. It wasn't a complaint, it was something went wrong with the thermostat and we changed it, right? Because now we're now making the place comfortable, but we're also now able to do things like nighttime setback, turn that temperature down at night. You go to the Home Depots and the Chapters to buy your thermostat, those thermostats have nothing to do with water temperature, right? You want to put a nighttime setback on a home with radiant heating. How many of you guys have heard, oh, don't set back radiant heating, it's going to take forever to heat up, right? I get that a lot, right? Okay, yeah, that's true if you have no control of your water temperature. But now we do, right? I can take that thermostat and I can say, hey, at nighttime, let's bring the operating costs. Let's bring it, instead of heating the house to 20, let's bring it down to 15. Well, guess what we're going to do with that water temperature? We're going to lower it, right? Generic thermostats have nothing to do with water temperature, right? So you're just opening that valve and hoping the boiler is at the right temperature. Does that kind of make sense? So it's taking this technology another level and doing it on a small scale and large scale. So one of the things that we always start off with is piping diagrams. A lot of people are nervous about air-to-water heat pumps. If you look at these 3 diagrams, who's the heat pump? The guy at the far right, that's our little symbol. That could be a geothermal air-to-water heat pump. Here's a modulating condensing boiler. These are some low-loss headers. Here's a storage tank, a buffer, a storage tank. When geothermal first came out, and unfortunately with a lot of air-to-water heat pumps now, they're like, hey, let's just keep this tank at the same temperature 24/7. Are we keeping this at 24/7 at that same temperature? No, we're not. Why are we keeping a big tub of water at 120 degrees? I don't need 120 degrees around, right? When we've gone back, we have a lot of these things on graphing. We were looking at some houses like just in Point Grey in like January, February. Math formulas say you had to run that at 120, but because we had the thermostats there, they're running at like 75, 80 degree water. They don't need those excessive numbers. They don't need those high temperatures. Why are we building this house? Awesome energy step code. We're going through all this work. You guys have done so many things with making these homes better, right? But we have a system there, thermostats that are wasting all this heat, right? We're firing these boilers to such high temperatures. We're keeping tanks at set temperatures, wasting a lot of energy. So we can make a huge difference with this type of setup. There's a lot of pretty neat things that we're doing. So I just want to kind of share with you a couple piping schematics. Here's kind of my go-to piping schematic. This is air-to-water heat pump. backup electric, and we have a fan coil system and a radiant floor heating system. This can also be a boiler. If we looked at that, we put a boiler in there, the piping for boiler is the same. So it's just a different kind of appliance. So don't be nervous about putting in air-to-water heat pumps. What you want to look at is how are we piping these. Fortunately for us, when we started doing this 406 control, it started with 30 homes in Tawasin Springs back in like 2016 or something like that. And it was all in-floor heating, in-floor cooling. And we actually went back and chatted with them, and they said, hey, you know what, it's just like a cool basement, right? And a lot of folks use that, and it's still running today, right? This is just a typical piping diagram where we do a different method of mixing called injection mixing. We have fan coils, we have radiant heating. We flip it around to do cooling. Now we can do fan coil cooling and floor cooling. Floor cooling runs at a warmer temperature than fan coil cooling. There's just one job I just was working on just the other day. Boilers, you can do so much with boilers. Indirect tank, pool, hot tub, radiant floor heating, right? This is just kind of one of our setups that we have, right? And what we have here is just consistent wiring, right? How are we wiring this? Well, we have 2 wires for our zone valves. Maybe we'll have 4 wires for our thermostats. And so when you open the panel, you can troubleshoot these things. I always encourage the use of wiring centers because of being able to troubleshoot these things. There's a lot of times I spent my career going around, crawling around in people's closets, trying to find manifolds, right? Well, we're, tearing apart their closet and seeing where the manifolds are for the radiant heating. They'd put it behind a piece of drywall. The drywall would have the screws already falling out, right? And it was just like, this is so unprofessional. We could do better. Anyways, this is just one of our samples of some wiring, right? Here, this 400 control. This is a single stage gas boiler, 4 zones, 4 zone valves, and be able to modulate that burner to what we need. Here's just some of the installs. Todd Backus, well, it's the next slide that he says that you got to make sure you do. Hang on, I need to drink this. Here's just, I always like to recommend like a home run wiring system because of the ease of access for everybody, right? Put all our controls in the mechanical room, right? Now you have access. You can open up this panel. Okay, why isn't that thermostat working, right? What's that little sticker there? You gotta zoom in there. We got, these are zone valves. They wire into these controls, and we modulate the burners of those boilers to what this building needs, right? These are just simple wiring centers, just to keep the wiring clean and neat and tidy so that the next guy can troubleshoot, right? We've been to jobs, I know you guys have all been to jobs where you go there and you're like, how am I gonna take out this expansion tank? How am I gonna get access to that? Someone's buried the 4 storage tanks behind piping. There's one project I know of in Point Grey that stuff's there permanently. You'd have to demolish the house to get it out of there. Right? There's a lot of stuff out there. And it's just, that's the real estate we're given, right? Our mechanical rooms are shrinking. People want that real estate for other things. They don't have room for 4 storage tanks. They want to have, what do they want to have? They want the kids' bedrooms. They want to have the media room. They want to have that. All right. We need to have that living space. So what I like to recommend are, do that home run wiring. Bring your thermostats back to your mechanical room. Bring all your zones back to your mechanical room. Put your thermostats at eye level if you're putting them in the mechanical room, right? This is our 50 zoner here. This is a cool project, this company called Ridge Meadows. It's kind of neat. They got red here and blue there. Well, that's a heating and cooling thermostat. It's really cool to see what guys have done with Tecmo over the years. And it's pretty impressive and it's fun, right? Guys put it on Instagram, look what we did. We had one guy, won the sweet heat contest. I'm like, cool, man. Like, I think you guys have probably done the same thing, right? And it's neat to kind of see what it's done for folks, but it's also the opportunity as well. A lot of people in this industry are their own small business, right? A lot of plumbers become their own small business. Our trade schools don't really talk about business. In Australia, if you have to get a permit, like if you want to put in a boiler and actually get a permit, you actually have to take a business course. You have to take a full-on business course in order for the city to even give you anything, right? Because it shows people how to run a business, how to price things, don't forget things. Our industry right now, it's not apples to apples at all. I talk to builders, they're like, oh, I got the cheapest guy. Guess what you're getting? Yes, you're not even getting any of that stuff, right? What do you want for your custom home? What do you want for just your plain Jane home? I've lost jobs to DDC systems that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. We were in low-cost housing in Vancouver, a bunch of townhomes. Every townhome just had a heat pump, right? And every townhome had this complicated DDC panel that they paid that company probably thousands and thousands of dollars. We come in here with our 564 thermostat, maybe $400. We solve the day. And they're not doing anything else. Ski resort, it's up in Revelstoke, Nelson. They paid a company, we were actually on the specification. They paid a company to do all the controls. So it's all this crazy stuff. A guy comes in, he programs it, it's a DDC system. Because it's at the top of the mountain, no one can even get there, except you had a helicopter in. Anyways, they're taking it out and they're gonna put in Techmar because the guy that wrote all the programming is long gone, or they have to pay him to do something, right? What if this is your house? This is your own house. That's what you gotta think about. Well, did you do this in your own house, right? Well, obviously, if you had a 50 zone house, why not, right? I could do this in my apartment building. We could have remote sensors for everybody, but then no one will have access to turn their heating up and down. Connectivity, right? So one of the trends that we're seeing is this thing called home automation systems. And these are companies, they're kind of like the electronics for your house. They're doing lighting, they're doing all the stereos, all the media, they're doing blinds, they're doing, your TVs, your audio rooms. But they want to see the thermostats. So that's where we came up with products that talk to their systems, that we can talk to them, and maybe the customers put in these fancy pads, and that'll talk to our thermostats. Or what also we have is standalone systems that create websites and apps for our products. What's been really cool about this, we call it the 486, is that customers can pull up all their temperatures on their phone, play around with it, but you can also graph and see your system. And we've been able to trend log, and this is included in the price. We're not charging, we're not billing you monthly for this, right? So you buy that, it's yours, you get the website, you get the app for your phone. Who knows, 20 years down the road, things have changed, I don't know, whatever. We just wanna make sure what you do with this app is now you can trend log. We had a house in Tofino. Every room was working great except for the kitchen. Why isn't the kitchen working? It should be working. Everything else is working. You could see the graphing and you could see it wasn't working. It turns out there was something wrong in the construction of that kitchen. It had nothing to do with our product. It's your product, it's broken. No, it's not, it's working, it's calling for heat. But what's cool about this trend logging is we've been able to go back and see some, that job with the floor cooling and see how it's working. It's pretty neat. It's really awesome to see this going in there. And we're just so fortunate with the customers and the people we've worked with over the years. It's been really a cool setup. We've been involved with so many projects. But my key is our industry, talk about the plumbing industry, you're an apprentice, you become a journeyman, right? We want to share that information. Who's sharing their information with the younger folks? You are, Dave. You're passing your stuff, your knowledge along, right? Jay, you're passing on, Roland, pass it along to to you, right? I hope. Yeah, exactly. And it's really, what information can we share? And because we've been the reps, I got drawings go back to 2007. I'm probably probably over 4,000 or 5,000 drawings that we've done over the years. A lot of them are pretty similar, right? But it's just more, hey, let's be consistent. Here's a mechanical drawing, here's an electrical drawing, here's all your settings, right? And it's been pretty neat. So this is just an example of one of the sheets I'm sending out to people. So if you're working on a custom home, I say, let's fill this out, right? Maybe we want to fill out what's going on in all your zones. What's happening with your, what is your system? Are you doing boilers? Are you doing heat pumps? What is your cooling? Are you all set up? Are you doing auxiliary things? Domestic hot water, pools, hot tubs. Snowmelt, believe it or not, is becoming a bigger trend. You know why? Because you can't volunteer to snowmelt your driveway when you're on a strata. Because if you do, you have to keep serious records of every single place that you shoveled. Right? So yeah, snowmelt does require a better gas appliance, right? See, it's got some opportunities there. We're seeing a lot more snowmelt systems out there for safety, right? Helicopter landing pads. We've done a few, the one at VGH, the one, you know, you got to come in on the helicopter, you better have that snow melted because you're going to be slipping off. No, you want to be safety. So there's a lot of things in there, a lot of things we can do with hydronics that you can't with electricity. And that's me. Todd Davis. That's my phone number. That's my cell phone.